So one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I decided to enter politics was that when my daughter was 11 or 12, she got the vaccine from the schools, but without the patient information leaflet. And of course, there is a societal trust between the medical profession and doctors that you can only make a medical decision if you have full informed consent. And so with the information, there wasn't the patient information leaflet with the vaccine. And I immediately went to the next morning to the people who were given the vaccine saying, where is the patient information leaflet? This is wrong. And then when I looked into it, that there were issues around Irish law and EU law that now no longer, because we were members of the European Union, that we were not given full informed consent. And that's why I decided it's time for me to actually dedicate, 10 years of my life to ensure that people have informed consent. And the reason why they want to silence the discussion is that people do not have the information that vaccines are not safety tested and that they contain ingredients that in and of themselves are really toxic. So like 70% of the vaccines have aluminium, and aluminium is a neurotoxin, and I would never take aluminium. It should not be injected. It shouldn't be in the vaccine. And for decades, mercury, which is one of the most toxic substances on earth, was in vaccines given to babies. And babies before 9 months or a year cannot make antibodies. So they're given vaccines containing, they were aluminium and mercury. So why they don't want this discussion is that they want to say the current lockdown is going to be solved by a vaccine, but they don't want people raising questions about that the vaccines are not safety tested and that they actually might be the source of a lot of illnesses and symptoms like chronic fatigue. And that's why they are censoring and undermining reputationally people who are raising issues about the vaccine, or that you can actually boost your immune system and be healthy without vaccines, because then that would undermine their business model.
Now, who's they? Because is that the governments? Is that Google? Is that pharmaceutical companies? Or are they working in concert? I find it hard to believe that anybody can work in concert. So who is they, do you think?
That is a very good question. That is a very good question. So I suppose, what we have to say is there are people of goodwill in the world, and that individual doctors and nurses and people who work in government agencies and funding agencies and medical organizations probably went into that profession or into science or into media not wanting to do wrong things. But when you look behind a lot of the things that's going on, those people were not educated, or it's very difficult for them to get the information. And that's why the patient information leaflet that I decided was for me a kind of a line in the sand, that people have to know what's in these vaccines or medical interventions that they're getting, because by law on the patient information leaflet, it will have a list of what the adverse events are, which are like chronic fatigue or multiple sclerosis or juvenile arthritis. There's a list of multiple diseases. And the reasons why people themselves and parents need to know is that if they don't know, and then it usually takes months for a child to go from being healthy, would say, to get multiple sclerosis. If the parent doesn't have the information, they won't make the connection. So they won't be able to get the right treatment for their child. And a lot of people feel let down because it takes them years before they make the connection. And then they realize, oh, if I had the patient information leaflet, I wouldn't have made that decision, or I could have helped my child better. So that's about informed consent and access to information. So what's going on now is that it's almost like this lockdown is entirely unnecessary, but the solution of it is to vaccinate. And so I don't exactly know the answer who they are, but they're compounding a solution to a problem. The problem itself is not necessary. It was responded to incorrectly. And the so-called solution to this problem may cause a huge amount of ill health. And there are politicians and the pharmaceutical industry, there are scientists and doctors and civil servants and journalists, that all of whom are good people, but they don't actually know that there's a serious issue going on. They're not aware of it. they themselves don't have the information. And they're now making it difficult for people like us to join the dots. And they are othering us, by calling us deniers and putting, words into our mouths that we haven't said, and trying to undermine our reputations very successfully and intimidate us by not being able to earn a living. And that is as well so that other people who might themselves raise questions couldn't afford to be in a situation where they might lose their income and their professional standing and their standing in society. So it's a process of intimidation and lack of information. And I would say the people that really should know, and that's why we're talking about malfeasance, which is a crime, is that the ministers for health and the people in the head of these medical organizations. So malfeasance is, even if you don't know, or you say you don't know, you should have known. And so why we're being censors is that if we get millions of views, then they cannot turn around and say, I wasn't aware of the issue, of the immune issue and adverse events associated with an influenza vaccine. Because if it came to an inquiry or to a legal claim, people would say, well, Dolores Cahill or people that you've had have got 30 million views. You should have been aware. So it's in their interest to censor the information so that if there is an inquiry, that they can say, well, we weren't aware of those issues. So that's what's going on.